There is, for the first time, I would say, there is a good consensus between the Congress and the BJP on the US relationship. In fact, there are more differences on China, where the Congress party is taking a more hawkish line.
In this week's column, in this week's Raja Mandla, you looked at, of course, taking off from the Prime Minister's visit for the Quad Summit to the US, as meeting with President Biden as well as the other Quad partners, and the evolution of technology diplomacy. How, and I think this is the fourth phase. You've said at various points, India has tried to place science and technology, both for defense and civilian purposes, as the centerpiece of its diplomatic and strategic outlook. What do you think? You mentioned it in the piece, everyone should read it, of course, but what do you think? How has it changed with this current government and in this current moment from before?
Look, I think the big difference this time is the geopolitical equations, the global economic situation, as well as the capacity of the Indian state to push through some major initiatives at home. I think that's what has come together to make the current phase probably one of the more successful technology diplomacy initiatives. I mean, we refer to, Nehru was very modernist. He was very enthusiastic about technology. And he did create the basis of India's atomic energy, space programs, the IITs, agricultural modernization. There, I think initially we got a lot of help from the Americans, but that kind of sputtered out as India's economic orientation changed. It became more, state-driven. We're not interested in foreign collaboration slowly. So I think that ended because the nature of India's economic orientation changed. And then India and US were buddies in the 50s, became, adversaries, if you will, by the 1970s. And I think that complicated. And then you had the non-proliferation question, which then, Indira Gandhi did the first nuclear test in 1974. That brought in sanctions. And the whole thing just ended up in actually a problematic area where Indian atomic energy and other programs were constrained by the international system. Then the second phase was Rajiv Gandhi, Indira Gandhi tried to break out of this in 84, 85, 86. They tried to re-engage the United States, find ways in which we could do technological collaboration. That too, the intentions were good. Some interesting things happened. For example, those of us who remember Rajiv Gandhi, this whole thing of building a supercomputer in India, the whole question of working with the Americans on building an aircraft in India, all those began to take off. But then it had to have crash landing, as in the 90s. The whole question of non-proliferation once again became very, very important. Then the third opportunity came when the Indo-US nuclear deal, which was done under Manmohan, we were tried for the deal, both initially under Vajpayee, then under Manmohan Singh. That kind of collapsed because of the deep political differences and what should be the terms of engagement with the US. And then we had the scientific departments were not very enthusiastic, and there was a lot of resistance to India-US nuclear deal. So I think this time, US is very eager to build the capacity of its friends, given its competition with China. Second, US also wants to rearrange the global supply chains. So it wants to move a lot of things out of China to India. And then within India, Prime Minister Modi has put in a lot of political capital to push through technology initiatives, initially on the digital side, then on the green energy, then on the whole question of, artificial intelligence, and now on semiconductors. So this, I think, fits in with the US initiative. So I think there is much convergence, and there is enough political will in both sides to make this a success.
One of the things you mentioned in the article, everyone should look at it. It'll be on the IndianExpress.com and probably in the description or wherever you're watching this video, is that, there's also the fact that Mr. Modi, at least, I mean, until now and even now, it's not that on this there is consensus, was the first non-coalition government in about 30 years in India. And similarly, the 90s is also the phase. How much is the sort of bipartisan, because you don't see that kind of objection to dealing with America even from the Indian opposition now. I mean, the left, the Marxist left is diminished in that sense, but even otherwise, and you don't see it in America, there'll be some stray noises about human rights or, certain things now and then. But broadly speaking, how far is that political consensus, do you think, now firmed up, even going forward as these technology
Yeah.
partnerships?
You remember in the UPA one, that is 2004 to 9, I mean, the government was paralyzed by the left on the question of the nuclear deal. In fact, the left broke the coalition. Luckily, the government survived. And then the Congress party itself, there was a lot of hesitation about doing this deal. So therefore, what you had was that though it was a major opportunity, the political divisions, one between the Congress and the BJP, though the BJP actually began the process. When Manmohan Singh did it, they tried to oppose in joining hands with CPM. And so there was an inter-party rivalry, and then there was internal bureaucratic resistance that toppled it. But I think today, if you see Rahul Gandhi's recent visit to the United States, he's actually been very, very positive about India-US engagement, the emphasis on technology, the emphasis on economic growth, manufacturing. So in a way that there is, for the first time, I would say there is a good consensus between the Congress and the BJP on the US relationship. In fact, there are more differences on China, where the Congress party is taking a more hawkish line than the BJP on the territorial aggression issue. So right now, I think it's in a good place. Of course, we have the US elections. Whether anything will change, that is broadly, we've seen a consistent pattern starting from Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. All of them have actually supported greater collaboration with India. And I think there's enough reasons to believe that this will continue, whoever wins the election.
There's two aspects, you mention it in the end of your piece, but is I mean, there will be collaboration, but then India also needs to up its science and technology game in multiple ways. So I think there's two. So one, how do you think it has to do that in terms of just being able to create those kind of knowledge partners? I mean, is it universities? Is it private sector involvement more? And the second is that science bureaucracy. That this government, a lot of it is a bureaucratic structure of academics perhaps, but there are as much bureaucrat scientists as rather than. And do you think there's some need for reform in that area as well?
No, absolutely. I think without reforming, see, the problem in India, once you set up something, it acquires a life of its own, and there is no attempt to review. The conditions have changed, the structure has changed. Today, for example, on space, much of the new technologies, outer space, including nuclear in the US, digital, and all this, the progress is being driven by a private sector. Today, Musk launches most of the satellites. It's not the NASA anymore, the dominant player. But in India, we stuck to that. The Modi government did initiate some reforms. It's brought in the startups, but it is still, uh, uh, to bring a proper law, a space act that will give freedom for the Indian private sector to participate, give it a legal base. Similarly, on the atomic energy side, one of the interesting things, Prime Minister Modi, he had a meeting with one of the nuclear reactor companies headed by an American Indian called Krishna Singh. He's got which makes nuclear reactors, small reactors, which can be used to replace coal-fired power plants. That is, you can just replace the coal boiler with a nuclear reactor. So there are a lot of new possibilities, and I think this requires actually a change in the Atomic Energy Act. So that too needs to be done. The dominance of the state agencies, and then the problems that finance ministry and others who create regulatory problems, taxation problems, all this make the creation of a strong ecosystem for modernization of a science infrastructure problematic. So there's enough to be done. So when the PM met the tech CEOs in New York, they raised the issue. Look, there are ease of business. India has done a lot in the last 10 years, but there's a lot more to be done. So I think those issues are there. The question is how far and how much Prime Minister Modi can push to actually produce those reforms, which will make attractive, not just for the American companies, but for other companies as well.
Thank you so much, sir. We will see you next week. Everyone read the piece. It's on the indianexpress.com.
So,
Yeah, wherever you're watching this video, should be a link in the description. Thank you so much.